Giving honor to God, our creator, our redeemer, and our provider. We love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our strength. And we love our neighbors as ourselves as we give honor to our spiritual guides, to our Supreme Mother, Mildred Davis Miller, to His Holiness of Blessed Memory, Master Malvin Davis, to our Supreme Father, Marshall Davis, our Supreme Mother, Aletha Ravina Davis Drake, to all the saints and loved ones and friends of the Spiritual Guidance Temple of Truth, to the people of all nations, to all living creatures, to all material manifestations, I greet you with Otep, Shalom, peace abide. For scripture today, we'll be reading the 113th Psalm. Here beginneth. Praise the Lord, you his servants, praise the name of the Lord. Let the name of the Lord be praised both now and forevermore. From the rising of the sun to the place where it sets, the name of the Lord is to be praised. The Lord is exalted over all the nations, his glory above the heavens. Who is like the Lord our God, the one who sits enthroned on high? Who scoops down to look on the heavens and the earth? He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. He sits them with princes, with the princes of his people. He settles the childless woman in her home as a happy mother of children. Praise the Lord. I've read the 113th Psalm in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Blessed Mother. Amen, amen, amen. And now let's repeat the Lord's Prayer together in unison. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen, amen, amen. And now we're going to have a song. I just need to change my optimization here a bit. And our song is called Faith of Our Fathers. And the first line is Faith of Our Fathers, Living Still. In spite of dungeon, fire, and sword, oh, how our hearts beat high with joy. Whenever we hear that glorious word, faith of our fathers, holy faith. We will be true to thee till death. Okay, so that it. And now for our meditation, and I call this meditation, Speak Through Me, O Lord. I'll ask you to repeat after me for this meditation. Okay. Speak through me, O Lord. Let me proclaim an everlasting love that will touch the hearts of all human beings. Guide me so that I will defend the rights of the poor and needy. Bless me with an understanding heart that I may judge fairly. Speak through me, O Lord, and let your glory abound forever and forever. Amen, amen, amen.
It didn't come out.
That's it. Okay, I'm having my wife say the link didn't come. So I'm going to send out the link again. Just give me a second here. Remember how to do it. Come on. That. Okay, that should be over. They should have the link should have gone out now. And today I just wanted to, because there was a National a federal holiday that was enacted on Friday by President Biden for the Juneteenth, or they called it the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, that we're very glad that the federal government now will recognize Juneteenth as a holiday. And Juneteenth is the day when it was announced in Texas that they would have to free Black people from enslavement according to the Emancipation Proclamation. I had this talk yesterday at a park, and I was letting them know that, a lot of times when people think of the Emancipation Proclamation and Lincoln signing it in January of 1863, that it was sort of like going to be this magic wand type of thing. But it wasn't a magic wand. It was him ordering his troops that as you take over cities in the South, when you take over the cities, that we are going to emancipate the Black people in that city and let them go and become um, independent citizens of the United States, where they would be no longer be held in oppression by those who considered themselves to be their masters. I really call them the oppressors, not the masters. Um, and that the United States would no longer tolerate or facilitate the practice of putting someone in bondage from someone else. Because for something like that to work, the government, the agencies all have to work in concert to keep such a system in place. And the federal government was saying that we are no longer going to be one of the facilitators of that type of treatment of citizens of the United States. So it was a very wonderful day. Now, it took Lincoln some time to be able to establish that in all the states. And it didn't happen in Texas in those Confederate states until June 19th, 1865. And so a lot of Black people always were very encouraged by Lincoln as a leader because he had actually kept the promise. There are other times that Black people throughout the earlier years of the United States that they had made all these promises about emancipation, but Lincoln said it and Lincoln kept his promise. So we're very thankful that President Joe Biden was able to sign that law that went very well, not without a hitch in the House, but went through unanimously in the Senate, and a majority of the House of Representatives approved making this the 11th federal holiday. Now, each state also, each state and each city and each business has to make their decision on how they're going to handle it. So it doesn't, just because it's a federal holiday, doesn't mean that the businesses have to respect it, but a lot of them are looking for ways so that they can also recognize this what I feel is a very important day in the history of the United States. Because with the enactment of the Emancipation Proclamation, the major theme behind it, and a lot of times we think that, oh, this was racial equality, but it's not so much racial equality as it was the federal government saying that we believe that emancipated workers are going to be more productive and have a more sustainable business model for this nation. That is really to me, one of the most important things that is often overlooked, because when you look at some of the writings of Lincoln, Lincoln did not really believe in the equality of the races. He believed that the white race was actually still better than the Black race. But what he and the Republicans at that time didn't believe, they did not believe that oppressing people and slavery was the best social economic uh, model for the United States. And they wanted them to say, we need to use a social economic model that was based on employers and employees. And even in the proclamation, even when they came out and made the readings, they were encouraging Black people to become employees of these plantations, not to be slaves of these plantations. So what they were promoting was a business model that had the workers to be able to have a say in their lives, to be able to live without the oppression of someone else choosing who you're going to marry, where you're going to live, and other things about what you're going to do with your life when you got up to work, that it was giving the workers the opportunity. And that is because they believe that that type of social economic model, one where you had people who were emancipated, who were free, who were liberated, who could make choices about their life, that that was a better business model and social model for a sustainable and prosperous United States. And to me, when I look at the development of the United States after emancipation, you see that United States did continue to prosper. It did continue to grow. A lot of that growth was not only was not in the Black community. A lot of that growth actually happened in other communities, but it showed that this business model where people are independent was a better business model than one when you enslave people. So we want to give a shout out and a thank you to the U.S. Congress, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, and a shout out to the President for making this a Memorial Day. And hopefully, as they continue to celebrate it, that they'll begin to look at what it actually meant, not only to Black people, but for the prosperity and the sustainability of the United States of America. Did anyone want to have anything to say about Juneteenth before we go on? No comments? Okay. And so now we'll get to our message for this Sunday, which is it's like the survival guide for fathers and husbands. And I call this a survival guide because of what Supreme Mother taught me. And she taught me, and well, taught all the men that Proverbs was something that men needed to learn and study and get it to like to soak into their brains so that they could be the good heads of the households around them. That there was not, men were thinking that, oh, that we just naturally have something in us that makes us leaders, and that's not true. Just like for women, it's not, you're not born knowing how to do some of the things that they always assign women to do. You have to learn some of those things. And Mother felt that it was the same way with men. Yes, the man should be uh, a head or a leader and a spokesman in his household. But to do that, there were certain things that he needed to learn how to do, things he had to lead. So when you were going out there, just for women, just don't go out there and pick a man, but go out there and find a man that you know who has some of these leadership skills, that know how to be able to make decisions and to move forward with decisions as you find it. In the Bible, it often talks about finding a good wife, but women, you also need to look to see what does it take to be a good husband and a father. Now, one of the places we're going to look at is the 31st chapter of Proverbs. I know this chapter is used a lot when we're talking about women and mothers, and it's one that talks about who can find a virtuous woman and her price being more than precious gems and rubies and or diamonds. Um, and what we don't know or don't often look at is that starts at about the 11th verse of the 31st chapter of Proverbs. As the first 10, 9 or 10 verses, I think it's the first 9 verses of that chapter actually give some instructions to men. Now, of course, the whole book of Proverbs is basically instructions to men how to exemplify the type of wisdom that you need to be a leader. So then in this last chapter, it gives a final word to men and then tells men what to look for in a virtuous woman. Now, I know in other parts of the Bible it says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing, but this chapter says that you need to be looking for a virtuous woman. You need to be looking for a woman who can provide some of these things for her family. So this is a part of Proverbs where it's actually telling men what to look for in a good wife. But before it does that in this 31st chapter, it's some additional instructions that it gives directly to men. Because one of the things you're going to find out, what we're going to be talking about today, is that most people, and especially men, when they look to the Bible to find some instructions about having a wife or a girlfriend, they will look to the parts of the Bible that is giving instructions to women on how to make themselves more beautiful and how to be able to be a support to your husband to lift him up in the community. And they will use those as passages and saying, see, women, this is what you need to do to be a good wife. And to me, what they should be looking at is what does the Bible say to men about how you can be a good husband and father? Because there, if you think of the whole book of Proverbs is devoted to this, if you think of every passage that they have where they tell women about what they should be doing, there is a complementary passage in there that tell husbands and fathers what they should be doing, that we should be looking for those things that are the instructions to the men and not be looking at what are the instructions to the women. And most men don't look at those instructions. They just want to say, oh, we're going to make it the woman's fault if I am not a good head of a household, if I am not a good leader, if I am not a good example, if I am not doing the things that I should do. And in the 31st chapter of Proverbs, it starts off as saying what Solomon gives. He says, I'm going to give you some instructions that came from my mother. And in it, in giving those instructions from his mother, he gives the name that his mother called him. And his mother called him Lemuel. Lemuel, that's Lemuel, Lemuel. And Lemuel is a symbolic name of Solomon. This is a name given to him by his mother, whose name was Bathsheba. And Bathsheba called him this because the word breaks down to at the end of it is of course God, and Emu is a name. It kind of translates to belonging to God. So the name of Lemuel it means like you are of God or you belong to God. So he's saying, and it calls him King Lemuel. So it's saying to be a king, you have to be connected to God. You have to be of God and be connected to God to be the type of king. And I always, when I think of the word king, I always think of Master Malvin when he would talk about it. And he says, whenever you think of the word king, think of a can doer, that you can do things. That's what makes you a king, is being a can doer, is a king. So if we want to be can doers, if we want to be prosperous, then we need to think of what is the ideas or wisdom that we need to have in our minds, our hearts, and our souls to be able to do it. Because when we talk about Solomon being the wisest man, we can see that it was wisdom that separated him and made him be able to be a very prosperous king of Israel. And so it's two things about Solomon that I always think say he was known for wisdom, but Solomon's name actually means peace. We often say the word shalom, which has the sh sound, the l, and the m in it, and a vowel for an o sound. And when we look at the word Solomon, we can see all of those alphabets shown in there. And so when we look at what Solomon means, it means peace. And God tells us, blessed are the peacemakers. So it showed that Solomon, by his name, was one who was a peacemaker, that he could bring peace to things, that he could actually resolve things. And this was how he was given, uh, came to wisdom. In fact, when Solomon learned that he was going to become king, he prayed to God, and God came to him and offered him to anything he wanted. He just says, "Tell me what you want." and I will grant that to you. So Solomon could have asked for anything. He could have asked for riches. He could have asked for, anything. He could have asked for land, money, uh, military powers, or all these type of things. And what Solomon asked for was, give me an understanding heart. That is what Solomon asked for. Give me an understanding heart so I can know how to lead the people. So it's saying, even Solomon, and knowing that he had to be a king, he knew the thing that he would need most to be able to lead people was an understanding heart. And because God was so pleased with what he asked for, God told him, because of that, I'm going to give you wisdom, I'm going to give you riches, I'm going to give you all things, along with this understanding heart that I would give that I'm going to give you, that you requested, because that understanding heart, being able to understand things. And I like to mention that because a lot of times men think that that they are supposed to be um, uh, unemotional, that they're not supposed to use their heart. They're just supposed to use their head and this thing that they call logic to be able to get out of things. But to actually understand the things that are happening around you, you have to have an understanding heart. You don't want to be fickle in your emotions, because usually when we're talking about being too emotional, we're talking about the changeability of emotions, of going from one range to the other, and that men need to have emotions that are usually more stable. But men, I think, lie to themselves when they say that they're not they don't have emotions. What the problem is, they started sometimes get stuck on some stupid emotions. They would get stuck on the stupid emotion of I'm the big bad wolf type of motions, or I need to be feared, so I want people to be afraid of me. So that emotion of braggery. So they take on some emotions, some of the worst emotions, and they kind of get stuck on those emotions and said, "This will show me as a man," and then think that they're being logical about it, when they actually are being um, showing some of the most basis of emotions, and getting stuck on them, and then not moving from some of those because they don't have an understanding heart. And so I'm not telling men to become fickle, but I'm saying you need to try to, if you're going to stick with emotion, stick with an emotion that has some foundation to it. Don't stick to emotions that are just going to cause you to look uh, uh, that make you think you're looking like a man, but you're just looking like a monster. So we need to stop picking some of these monstrous emotions. These kill or be killed takes an emotional response of actually starting to hate and dislike other things. So we don't want those type of emotions. We want to have their understanding heart so we can at least understand the things around us. So from this idea of Lemuel, which means belonging to God, you have to start always thinking to yourself, am I showing that I am of God and I belong to God in the decisions that I have to make? Especially those decisions where I am expected to be the leader. And remember, the leader does not mean oppressor in chief. It does not mean the one who can beat the other people down. To be a good leader, because I mentioned earlier, the mother taught us that we needed to learn the Proverbs to begin to be a good leader, a good husband, a good father. But she also said that there were other things that the men needed to learn. And so, with some of the men, she would teach them about some of the things of Lodge and the real uh, spiritual teachings behind the lodge, because the lodge, when you look at some of their spiritual teachings, it was teaching them how to come together, how to meet together, what offices they would need to be able to have a good organization, So it was teaching them about organization. It was teaching them about having respect for each other, having respect for officers. I was teaching them to know the things that they need to learn. So she would have the men to learn these things. They would learn about the seven major offices of a lodge and what were the duties of each one of these offices and what were some of the pitfalls for some of these offices. So we would learn about what was the office of the president and how the office of a president was different from the office of a moderator. And then how you have a recording secretary and you'd have a financial secretary, you'll have a sergeant of arms, you'd have a chaplain. So all of these were offices of a lodge. Of, we always talk about it takes a whole village, where men need to learn what are some of the components that help that village keep going. And when you talk about the offices of a lodge, those are some of the things that you need to keep it going, that you need to have a way of recording things. So if that, because there was, in fact, there were like three different secretaries. There is a financial secretary, there was a recording secretary, and there was a corresponding secretary, one who was in charge of sending out correspondence of things. So all of those were things that we were learning so that we could be better. And that's why I call it was like a survival kit. It gave us a survival kit of things that she provided to us to help us to be able to be the heads of things and leaders of things. And sometimes to be a good head in an organization is not always just being that president, but can you be a head over the finances? Can you be a head over the recordings? Can you be a head over the sergeant of arms to keep the peace, or the sometimes we even call it the usher? Can you do well at that? There are several places where the lodge or the community needs people to help to direct them, and that it is beautiful when you can get men to be the ones who will step up and take over some of those positions. So we want to be like Lemuel, that we can belong to God, receive from God, and be able to use our talents to make sure that these families and these marriages can work with a person who has the skills that they need to be able to be a good uh, head or leader. But remember, the leader doesn't mean always the one who picks it, because when you get into a lodge and you have a meeting, or even in a family, that there has to be some way to help get everybody to sit down, think about things, and make some plans. And all the best ideas doesn't always come from the king, but the king is there to help to make sure that it's going orderly and that things are sticking to the principles that the organization or the family was formed for. Any questions about Lemuel before we go to some of the other points? So, and if not, we're going to go to now, and got Proverbs spelled wrong here. But the 31st chapter of Proverbs, the first, and we're going to go all the way down to the 11th verse. First, we're going to do the first to the ninth, and then we're going to do the 10th and 11th verse. So in the Proverbs, and this is a part most of you probably have not heard about, because like I said, when most people start talking about the 31st chapter of Proverbs, they started about the 10th verse. But if you go to the first verse of it, it says, the sayings of King Lemuel, an inspired utterance his mother taught him. So it said his mother, Bathsheba, was able to teach Solomon some of these things that were a inspired utterance, something that he should have to remember his whole life and put a part of his whole life, in order for him to be this type of king that belonged to God. And first thing it says, in the second verse it says, listen, my son, listen, the son of my womb. Listen, my son, the answer to my prayers. So this is just showing that how much that mother felt that she was attached to the son, and how she felt that she was going to give him information that was going to help him to become the best person, a best him that he could be. And so she told him that you need to listen. And remember, listening is a way to you to start to gain understanding. And so the first thing, even though it doesn't say it, one of the first things that men have to learn how to do is learn how to listen. We always think that to be a good leader, the first thing you have to know is how to give orders. But really, the first thing you have to do to learn to be a good leader is to be able to listen. If you haven't listened to what people want, how are you going to be able to understand? So it was saying that listening, so this is a very important part of being a leader, is do you know how to listen? And this is something that many men do not do. They always want to be the one to just to give some orders and not learn one of the first things of being a good leader, of being a good head of anything, is listen. Are you listening? Do you hear what is being said? And you have to learn even deeper how to listen even deeper than just the words that are coming out of a person's mouth. Are you listening to the crackle of their voice? Are you listening to the pain that they in their eyes? Are you actually listening to others? So you can get the answer to the prayers that people have for you, but to get answers to prayers, you have to. Can anybody tell me what they have to do? I'm gonna tell you. It's listen. You don't get answers to prayers if you're not listening. So the first thing it says that you have to do, the first tool that you should put in your survival kit, um, is learn how to listen. And some of these things I'm giving them for of course for husbands and fathers, but I'm actually giving it to the women so you can say, what do I need to teach or show my sons to do it? And here we have this saying, the sayings of the mother taught him. This saying is what you actually need to teach your sons, and it's good for daughters too. Everybody can be helped by learning how to listen. And women, please help with your sons of teaching them how to listen and how important it is to listen. Because even on sometimes when people get in deep arguments, but the question is, are they listening? I know, and I'm not going to tell the joke because I know my wife has it, but this is one of the things that I even talk about when there's a joke I have about a man who had trained a mule how um, to work like an ox. But the whole point of the thing is that the ox is obviously listening because when an ox is trained that you can train an ox to be able to turn left or right just by saying ye and haw. That whole idea of ye haw was actually a words that you would use to train an ox on when you wanted it to turn to the left and when you wanted it to turn to the right. And so the whole point of that joke and whole point of this thing is to say that that ox has to be listening in order for him to be able to hear that sound to know when the person wants him to go into either direction. And I don't even think they do with horses. Horses, you need a bridle to be able to get him to turn to left or right. But there are a way that they could train an ox that by listening to the sound of that person that is behind the plow, you could tell that ox which way it was supposed to turn. So listening becomes a very, very important part of being a good leader and using your strength in the right way. Now, in the third verse of this 31st chapter of Proverbs, it says, do not spend your strength on women, your vigor on those who ruin kings. So it's saying that certain women you should not be wasting your time on. It's certain women that you should not be trying to um, go after those women. And when you read the rest of Proverbs, it tells them about some of those women that men go after. and that they're going after them for the wrong thing. Even when we look at, and I think we're going to look at some of the chapters in the later part of the Bible, where it starts saying that you should be looking for women who have an inner beauty, not an outer beauty. So it was telling them that don't be attracted by that outside beauty of a woman, because so many kings have been overthrown by um, ruined by going after those type of women. And when I read this verse, what's always so strange to me about this verse is that this is Bathsheba talking to her son, who she had with David, and he was conceived through adultery. That she attracted David, uh, uh, possibly by her looks, because mother always said that they were actually soulmates, and that they probably would have, if they would have just waited, uh, to given some time, that they probably would have been together anyway. Um, but they jumped ahead, and they started sleeping with each other while her husband was still alive, and he was a soldier away at war. And later, David even had the man sent to the front lines and was killed in that war by direct commands to send him to the front lines. And all of it came out that this had been done, and that the wife was pregnant by King David, and David then married her. Solomon was born, and later Solomon became a king. But she was saying that uh, here in this third verse, she's saying, don't spend your strength going after the wrong type of woman, or going after women for the wrong reason, because you would end up ruining your kingship. You could end up ruining your ability to do things by just going after the wrong type of woman. And in the fourth verse, it goes on to say, "It is not It is not for kings, Lemuel. It is not for kings to drink wine, not for rulers to crave beer." So first, it's telling them you got to be on your wits, and part of it is, don't think that you're going to get drunk and come up with some better decisions, because sometimes people think that. They think, if I can get, and that's why a lot of times I see this in movies, and I say, wow. In all the movies, they will have people, and they will always go to drinks and think that somehow that it's going to show your manhood, to be able to show that you can drink and be able to do something. And but here is telling them that is not what a king or can do, or a successful person. They don't think that the first thing they need to do is they need to drink wine, or they need to crave beer. Um, because, and it tells them why. He says, because if you are drinking this wine, if you're craving this beer, in the fifth verse it says, lest they drink and forget all that was of all of what had been decreed. So it says, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed, and deprive all the oppressed of their rights. So it's saying it's decreed. And when you look at the Bible and the things that come from God, it tells them that you should not try to oppress the rights of others. But when you drink and crave beer and you go after things, you would start become more selfish. You start wanting the things that are just for yours. And talking about this craving, last week when we were talking about the magnet man and the appetites, that there are things that you get involved in that will actually make you start thinking only of yourself, and not thinking that you're in a position of leadership to actually help the people who are a part of that body, part of that organization. And if you start drinking, or craving these things, just like if you start getting too involved with those four appetites that we talked about before, you forget what is actually the purpose of what you're supposed to do. You forget what you're trying to lead. You're not trying to do something that is just for you. And again, this is a lot of times what men think. They think that the marriage is all about them. It's all about what they want to do, what they need to achieve in life, what they feel is going to make them look good, but it's actually about a family and how to make that family, about how not to oppress the rights of anyone in that family, including the wife. I'm going to add that you're not supposed to oppress the rights of the wife. You are actually there to help everyone in that family, in that group, to be the best that they can be, to achieve the most that they can achieve. But if you get drunk, and to me, it's not just drunk over wine, but remember, wine is the grapes that have been pressed through experiences. So you can get drunk in your experiences and from the experiences of life and start thinking that it's everything, it should be just what I want. It's just what I want the person to be, just what I want the person to have, just the things that I think are going to make me shine. All of those things will make you a worse leader, not a best leader. Remember, because you said the best leader, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to listen. And one of the things they're going to listen to is what do the other people want to achieve? What is inspiring them in life? And how can I help to achieve those things so I don't get drunk off of my own ideas, of my own appetite, and try to deprive the rights of the others by oppressing them. The sixth verse says, let beer be for those who are pursuing wine, for those who are in anguish. So it's saying that beer is for people who are anguished. That's for people who are somehow disgusted with their life, disgusted with what they have, and are in pain because of their life. So it's saying that, so it says, beer is for those who are perishing. It says that, so it's saying that that's for people who are sick. So it's saying beer helps you to get through sicknesses and anguish, because it says those who are perishing. So it's saying it's something that is just a relief for those who have given up. And if you don't want to be a person who has not given up, then what do you need the beer and the wine for? Because remember, it says in the sixth verse, let beer be for those who are perishing, wine for those who are in anguish. So it's actually saying for others, for those people who are perishing, those people who are anguishing, those are the ones who need beer and wine, or they need some type of substitute or something that's going to suppress. Because remember, beer and wine and alcohol are depressants. So they actually are an oppression on you. They're oppressing uh, your best ways of thinking. They are oppressing your desires and hope. They are something that are just going to actually squelch your ability to think and to decide. So it says, let those who are dying, who are perishing, those who are in anguish, let them try to get their best results from beer and wine and other substitutes for God. But for you, be a Lemuel, that you belong to God and you can receive your help from God. The seventh verse says, let them drink and forget their poverty and remember their misery no more. So it's just saying this is the best thing that beer and wine is going to do for you. It's going to help you to forget that you are deprived and miserable. So they're saying that's the best thing they said that you can use drinking for. And this is all types of things that you can forget that you don't have, you can forget that you are miserable through beer and wine. But it says, but if you are this type of king that belongs to God, and the eighth verse said, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. So it's saying that when you have your right mind, when you're connected to God and have learned these things of wisdom, you can now speak up for others. Um, first it's talking about your ability to listen. Now it's talking about what do you speak up for, because that's what a leader is there most for, is to speak up for all of those who are part of it, especially those who can't speak for themselves and those who are destitute, that have um, or do not have a lot to speak up for themselves. So, and again, when it's talking about speaking, remember the first part of it talking about being a good listener. Now is telling us what to direct your thoughts to, what to be able to speak about. And in the ninth verse said, speak up and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and needy. So in this short, the short part of it, of this first verse, is telling them about two things that they should do. One, to be a good leader, you should learn how to listen. Two, to be a good leader, you should learn how to speak up for those who are having problems, and to how to, and to me it's saying in such a way that will encourage them, and that you can judge fairly, and that you can defend the rights of even the poor and needy. So that means that a lot of times we say, and this is something I get this weird, is a lot of times they say to be a man, you should be the man because you are stronger, which actually kind of says that since you can beat up the wife, uh, then your way of doing things should be done. And here is saying that no, your strength is not to beat up on people to oppress them. Your strength is there to help you to defend the rights of those who are needy. Because the Bible later does talk about women being the weaker vessel, but here it says that if you are a man, you're supposed to be there to defend the rights of the poor and needy. That means that weaker village. You are there to defend that woman's right to prosper and to gain things in life. Before we go to the next two, I'm gonna give you another opportunity. Are any comments or questions so far? Because we're going to look at two more verses in this 31st chapter of
I, oh,
go ahead. Someone who was speaking?
oh no, I just was wanting to comment. That was a good point that you made. You just
Wait,
made.
you're kind of low, Teresa. Are you near your mic?
Yeah, I'm right here up on it.
Can
Can
everybody
you
else hear
turn
her
it in?
clearly?
Hello.
You're kind of soft, but go ahead.
Okay. I was saying that was a good point that you made about the strength being used to defend,
Yes.
and because a lot of men feel that the strength is there to like not only defend but dominate,
Yes.
but they do more domination than defending when it comes to a woman.
Yes.
So that was a good point that you made, and
Well, yeah, and it's valid true because so many of them think that they're supposed to be using your strength to dominate others. And when we're talking about men's and husbands, this actually even also goes to people who are leaders in organizations, that they
Mhm.
think that they should be using their authority to oppress everybody in the organization, rather than saying they should be using their authority to make sure that people don't get trampled on in the organization. Um,
Mm.
if you're a leader and you help defend your people in your group, you'll find that you will get more productive. I mean, even when I was talking about at the beginning, when I was talking about the Emancipation Proclamation, and this idea of saying that having emancipated people are the best model for social economic model than oppressing people, is talking about this same thing, that when the leaders start helping to uh, defend the people, defend those who cannot have who have been neglected to have their rights, they will find that they will get a more prosperous
Mm.
country, and it will be more sustainable. And when I say sustainable, you want both of them. You just want the way we get people who are rich now is that they will just keep destroying and destroying and destroying, and take over what's left from what is destroyed and just pile it up into big heaps, rather than saying, do you know, if we work together, we could have enough where everybody could have uh, a, a, a good part of what we have. There would still be some who would be richer than others, but even the ones down at the lower part of it will be able to have what they need. But go ahead, you had some more to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think also that with our society, the construction of our society, I want to say, they have put people in roles,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to kind of get out of the role that they put that they say that people should be in or should be doing,
Mm-hmm.
because it all depends on the situation. Like, um, let's say that I'm married,
Mm-hmm.
and the man isn't good with the money,
Mm-hmm.
but the
Mm-hmm.
wife is really good with the money. So now, when you look at that situation, you're like, "Mm, okay, men supposed to make all the decisions and be the leader, and they supposed to do this and they supposed to do that, and the women supposed to do the things around the house. But if you got somebody that's not good in a role that they were put in, and you are better at it, even male or whether you're a male or female, for the betterment of the household,
Yes.
you need to take on that role,
Yes.
because everybody isn't taught certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people who are not good with money, I've had kids who they didn't even know about a bank account.
Mm-hmm.
All they knew, they didn't know anything about a bank account. So what we did as a group at the school, we went and got the bank to come to the school, to the PTA meeting, talk to the parents, and then they would come out every Wednesday, and they would put they open up the children's an account. If the parent
Mm-hmm.
wanted to open up an account, they need to be taught certain things. And when you go into a marriage, you don't know a lot of things, and the two of you need to be learning things, and both of you need to be learning, different things. But everybody needs to learn what everybody else does, is supposed to do. That's what I want to say. It's supposed to do
Yes.
for the betterment of the household, for the betterment of the household. And
Yes. And
and
that's an
what
important
happens?
thing.
Society puts roles on people, and they think, oh, this is the way this supposed to go. No, not necessarily so. You must do what is for the best for the household, even just not what is best for the kids. It's what's best for the running of the house, the whole household.
Yes, that's so true. And mother used to call that being able to turn the round table. Uh, she was saying that when you have a round table, there sometimes you have to turn it and turn to the one at the table that is best at doing things. Don't be so stuck that you got to say, "Oh, this is a fixed table. You stay here, and other ones stay over there." You need to be able to know how to turn that round table, and whatever that body needs, you need to be able to say, who can I turn to be able to do this? Um, and that's another teaching mother is learn how to turn the round table. That means that everybody in the group, because you'll even find that even though one person might be best at something, there may be times that the other person may have to take it in. Like in the office when we just had this situation when I think we went somewhere and the secretary that was usually doing the notification was gone. And so all of the notifications were messed up because nobody else really knew how to do what? Take on that
Yeah.
role or what was done in it. So if you want to have that organization prosperous, you have to be able to plan for things like that. And what do you used to call it? Not a substitute. What do you used to call it? One, the backup. And that's some of the things
That's
that the
why they have
person,
a vice president.
right? That's where you have a vice president.
That's
It's
why
sort
the
of like
vice
as a,
president is there watching and learning everything that the president does.
yeah. Mhm.
So,
In fact, when you look at the history of vice
um,
president, it's kind of funny because when they first started off, when you look at the early days of the United States, um, the vice president, the first couple of vice presidents became presidents because it was sort of this idea that who would know better how to take over the reins of this new type of a country than the person who had been sitting as the vice president. And that happened for a couple of presidencies, that the vice president, even though they were of different parties, took over because they felt that that person would have gotten the experiences they need to become the president. And a lot of organizations use that, that the person who is the vice president actually becomes the next president. And sometimes they do this two or three deep. They may have a first vice president, a second vice president,
Mhm.
because for the organization to be sustainable, they know that it'll be good for that person to know those duties. And as the vice president, they get an inkling of what those duties are. But now the way we got
Uh-huh.
it so party infused, and the parties are against each other, uh, that's probably not good. Because remember, some of the in those days, the person that got the most votes was the president, and the person that got the second most votes would be the vice president. Now we do it where the president and the vice president are run together. So it's just saying that you have to learn how to manage, like what Teresa's saying, how to manage the whole lodge and how to make that we are working together as one body, one group, and that the person who is the leader or the president is just there to try to help them make sure that that body or groups continues with the principles that they were based on. And part of that is learning how to listen and learning how and what to speak up for. Here's some more. More thoughts?
Oh, I got one more thought.
Okay.
I got to take us back to Egypt.
Oh, Egypt. Okay.
Well,
Go ahead.
in Egyptian times, um, women were actually the leaders, and they didn't do a bad job. That's all I got to say.
You said they were the leader. You're still kind of soft. What did you say? That in Egyptian time, women were what?
Leaders.
Oh, yes. Yes, they had women who were leaders. And you'll find in the African societies, they always had a thing where they had men's groups and women's groups. And when we look at the societies, we kind of just judge what the men's group were doing, but the women's group were doing things as well. And a lot of times when you see it, because a lot of times the women's group were doing things like they were managing the processes of food. In Nigerian women, the men went out and managed the farms where they grew the potatoes and things, but the woman was the one who actually was at the market that were selling the things to actually make money from, and they were in charge of the actual commerce part of whatever they were working on that, and still having the children there to take care of. So there are ways for societies to have what the women want and what the men want. In fact, one African, when we talk about they had um, uh, a man can have multiple wives. One African man said that that was not an idea that came from the men's group. That was an idea that came from the women's group. It was the women decided that they were going to allow men to, and the reason was to have multiple wives because there were less men than there were women, and they wanted to make sure that every woman had the opportunity to become a mother. And so they decided that since there were less men, the only way that all the women would be able to have the opportunity to be a mother, because they got more, they didn't get their status in the women's group by who their husband were. They got their status in the women's group by their children and how their children performed. So they felt that each woman should have the right to become a mother, and the way to do that, since there were less men than there were women, was that each woman could have a husband, and that's how the husband was able, or the men were able to get multiple wives. But in that, the wives, each wife had her own household, and the man had his individual household. They were not all in the same household together. The man would go off and he would have a place where he would stay. The women would have a house where they would have that house and take care of the children. when if that woman turned, the man, and they would, even in that, they would make a decision. When it was that woman's turn, was the man to come over to her house, or was she to go over to the house of the man? So it was a different social system, but it wasn't based on the, and what he was trying to say is it wasn't based on the fact that saying that men deserved or required to have more than one woman. It was the fact that they thought that each woman should have uh, the opportunity to bring children so that the children could give her status in the community. And that's why they started the system of multiple wives. So it wasn't so, and so it wasn't that the man can control over him, but so that the woman, each woman could have children in her household. Any other comments or questions? And now we're going to look to two verses. Now, these two verses you've heard before from the 31st chapter of this, but I just put these here to show you that one of the things that this whole chapter is trying to do is to teach men how to find a um, a good wife. Because and here, and I'm reading, I think this is from the New International Version, says, a wife of noble character who can find. I think most of us remember saying a virtuous woman who can find. She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. So it's saying here that this whole chapter is trying to teach men how not just to find a wife, but how do you know what are the noble characters of a wife? Because it's not trying to say you can't do it, but it's saying that, look, if you're going to look for a wife, look for one who has noble character. And because her noble characters of that wife will be far more precious than having rubies. And because she will have noble character, you can have full confidence in her and that you will lack nothing. That means you won't be without anything because you had find a woman of noble character. Now, I think somehow when they got into the New Testaments, they forgot to put the part in there about noble character, or they kind of hid it by saying, he who finds a wife finds a good thing, and not saying that men need to be able to find a wife of noble character. And so when it's giving instructions to women in those chapters, it's actually tell them how to be um, of a noble character as a wife, how to be have nobility in your character. And I think in one of the verses we're going to look at it is telling women how to have those inner qualities that would make you this worth of be more valuable to that husband than rubies. But it wasn't saying that you were being oppressed for those reasons. It was saying that part of your character is going to be a great reflection on who and what the man can become. uh, but it's really talking about your the character of the woman, how you can act. I know Mother was very big on trying to make sure that she lifted up the men around her, and that she tried to give them the best. I remember even sometimes when we would go, Mother would take us out to lunch, and if she took you, even if you were a young man, out to lunch, knowing that you might not have the money to pay for the lunch, she would slip you the money so that when the waiters came over there, that you, as the man, paid for it, to help to kind of show that she was lifting men up. Many things she did with some of the men in the organization. She was a leader, but she would always make sure the father's board, and she would make sure those men were always uh, uh, shown and as something that was actually a necessary part of that, to try to help to lift them up and to engage them, and the things she taught them on how to be these better husbands and men. That's why she was to have special classes sometimes just for the men, so that they would have the type of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that they needed to make it better for the organization. And remember, she was doing these things for the organization, not doing these things because women should be less, or the children should be less, or in organizations that the boss should be the greatest one. She was doing it so that the whole organization could thrive. So again, these things that are many times these things that are in there that are instructions to women, they're saying how you can make the character of that organization or that family better through some of the things that you may do for that, and that your character would make it so that the husband or the leader that you're working with can have full confidence in you. So, any questions so far before we go over? We're going to look at, I think I put 2 chapters in here um, that we can, and I think I'll just briefly look at them because I said I was going to try to get out of it early for Father's Day. But 2 of the chapters where they talk about um, in the New Testaments. Remember, what we're saying in Proverbs is the Old Testament. But I think when you look at the things in the New Testament, you need to be thinking back on those Proverbs, back on how telling men how to find a good wife, and back on how both of them are responsible for making a good family.
They're trying to. They want the number for them to unmute.
To unmute? Oh, some people might want to unmute. So I guess someone's going to see.
Trying to get in. She says she can't.
Okay, to unmute yourself, you hit the star key. *6 should unmute you. It toggles between mute and unmute. So it's the star and the 6 key. So I think someone wanted to mute themselves. Like I see somebody that's muted. I'm going to unmute that person. And I sent a request to someone to unmute yourself. So you should be able to hit the *6 to be able to unmute yourself. Ah, you're unmuted. Go ahead. Now we're still not hearing a person.
Hello?
Hello. Now I hear you.
Okay. It's Gwen and Troy. We just wanted to say happy Father's Day to everyone.
Well, thank you.
That's online to you, Father Tyrone, because you definitely take on somewhat of the father role for all of us, the master of teaching, and that's a wonderful role to help guide so many in the world. And we were trying to connect with you guys a long time ago, but it just wasn't working, so we had to call my Teresa and get her to help out.
Okay, that's no problem.
So, but I just wanted to say when you guys were speaking on the lesson earlier, as far as the male's role and the female role, and how people kind of put everything in a certain in a certain placement and everything, it had just came to my spirit that it just goes back to being what the Bible says, being evenly yoked. We have to, that's what just kept coming to my spirit, is that, you have to be evenly yoked in a lot of ways. A lot of times people, when they do get married, some people get married for all the wrong reasons. Some people get married because of lust. Some people get married because, she's so pretty, he's so fine. Some people get married because of what the other one has, or what they can give them, and I just wanted to say that the thing that attracted me and Troy to each other the most was that both of us was of the non-denominational. We both was non-denominational, for one, and then both of us had prayed to God to send us someone that was for us, and to send that person, and let us know that it is that person, because a lot of people can come to you and to let you know that it is that person. This is the one I'm sending for you, and when we started courting each other, and he said he was non-denominational, I mean, that's what stood out more than anything, besides me seeing the light of the glow of him on him.
Mm-hmm.
When I first saw him, before I even knew him, I saw the light of glow because I asked the Lord to show me, to show me something to let me know it was him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want to encourage every married couple, every couple that's thinking about marriage, every couple that's together in general that may be listening, that, you know, we're all going to go through things, but, you know, those storms and those tests is what makes us stronger. And we are to embrace those storms and those tests from God, because it makes you who you are. It molds you into who you need to be, and it builds a character. You know, that's so awesome in the long run for us all. It was something else I wanted to say. I just wanted to say this is a powerful lesson. We have to definitely make sure that when, as far as what you were starting to say, when we're searching for a mate, that we're looking for the right things within
Mm-hmm.
that person, and not the wrong things within that person that is attracting us. Definitely, when it comes to, I saw on television where it was a psychologist, and he was speaking to this couple, and he said something that I agreed with and that I always felt that was so powerful. And when he said it, I just screamed, yes, yes, somebody's understanding. The biggest thing about making a marriage work, from my perspective, it may not be everybody's,
Mm-hmm.
but is to concentrate more on each other
Mm-hmm.
and not yourself.
Yes.
To concentrate, if you concentrate on him and making him happy, and he concentrates on you and making you happy, that is the key to a successful marriage.
Mm-hmm.
That is the key, because that's what eventually makes you evenly yoked, is your concentration levels on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're concentrating on him and keeping him happy, he won't have any room to be unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
If he's concentrating on you and doing things to keep you happy, she won't have any room to be unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? And then
Yes.
it'll get to the point where you're finishing each other's sentence. You're knowing what each other wants without even saying it. And that's what I'm learning. You know, sometimes I could be having a thought, and Troy is already reacting on the thought, and I haven't said anything to him, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's what starts to happen. So I just want to encourage. I just want to say thank you for the lesson. It is a blessing, and you know, I know that we haven't said much lately, you know, because like you said, sometimes there's a time to just be quiet and listen and take it
Mm-hmm.
in and meditate on what's being taught to you. And I just
Yeah.
want to say, God bless you all. We love you all. We miss you all, and we can't wait until we all connect again, physically in the presence of each other. Okay.
Okay. Well, no, thank you very much. Thank you. Because when you were speaking, it was making me think about something that it talks about and that was encourage ye one another. That is one of the most
Yeah.
important things, that you're trying to encourage the other, finding ways to encourage the other person, like I said, to be the most godly person they can be. That's not always what they want, but when you can see that you're trying to increase the virtue of the other person, you're trying to increase them in belonging to God and following the ways of God, that is the best thing you can do for them. That, I think, is what the Bible is talking about. It is not talking about oppressing anyone. It is not talking about people, yes, you're making sacrifice for the other person, but that sacrifice helps to make the both of you grow. As that important part of it, that it helps, like Teresa was saying, it's that helps the family grow. You have to start looking at yourself, and we're going to see a little bit about that as when we're looking at this 5th chapter of Ephesians, that you have to start looking at yourself as I know a lot of times you're talking about you do it for the other person and the other person does it for you. But what the Bible kind of says is you start to have looking at yourself as this one spiritual entity, this one body. And that one body, that's why a lot of times we say it's the family or it's the thing when you're talking about equally yoked. To me, what they need to do is they need to see that they are like one body. And yes, in the body that you have a head that help you to look out for the things and the needs of the body, but the head is not just supposed to be there to just look out for the head. It has to be there looking out for the whole body, as it's going to say. And so just let me read a little bit of the 5th chapter of Ephesians, and we can talk some more. And this one starts off when it talks about the submitting, it says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So it's saying, really, out of the reverence of Christ. In other words, and to me, this is like saying is, if you want Christ to be a part of that relationship, that you have to submit to one another. Now, this starts off by just not telling the wife to submit, but it's actually telling them both the husband and the wife need to submit to one another. Because remember, in the marriage, both of you are making a commitment. And it's saying, when it says out of reverence to Christ, is do you want the uh, Christ consciousness to be active in your relationship? And that is what it's saying, because if you're going to submit to something, you got to think is, what and why am I submitting? And this is saying that you are submitting, or you are committing, or you're becoming a part of that and working towards that thing out of reverence for Christ. Now, it does say, wives, submit yourself unto your own husband as you do unto the Lord. So it's saying, and because here it's telling the wives that they need to make this special connection with their own husband, not with somebody else's husband, but with your own husband. You need to have this special relationship as you do to the Lord, just like you would be connected to God and trying to work to uphold the blessings of God. You need to say, how can I keep my husband? Who he says, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, uh, of which he is the savior. So it's saying that that husband can be a protector for you, and a provider for you, just as Christ is the head of the church. But if we look back into the other section where it's saying that first you got to find like a virtuous wife, first you got to find a virtuous husband, a husband who is connected. And that's the other part of that equally yoked. It is better that you're equally yoked. It's saying you need one who knows how to be the head. The 24th verse says, now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. So that means in every way you should be helping to make that person leadership easier to perform. And it's, to me, one of the things that wives need to do to make sure it's easier to perform is not to, and because later I talk about not in a public way to bring your husband down. Now, that to me does not mean that you don't get a chance to say what you're going to say, or not, or where you present it. But just like I said, when mother would go out with men, she would have them, and this would be with any man, one of the, like the oldest men in the group would be the one that she would slip the money to pay, just so that it would be showing a respect, and that these were men of standing. Usually it would be men in the church that we'd be out there eating with, but it would be showing that these are men of standings in there. So it actually makes the whole organization looks better when you can see that the man is taking some type of responsibility. So it's for the reverence of Christ consciousness that you do these things. But then now in this one, and you'll hear these parts of this talked about a lot, the 21st to 24th verse. But one of the things I want to show here, starting at the 25th verse, And this is what I said that men should be looking at more. From the 25th verse to the 33rd verse is telling men what you need to do. So as men, we should not be so concerned about what the Bible is telling women to do to be able to get the Christ consciousness active in their relationships. You should be looking at what it's telling men to do to get the Christ consciousness active in your relationship. And the 21st part starts off saying, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So it means that you should be there to help to protect her and to uplift her, just as Christ is there for his love for the church. What are you doing to make sure that your wife is lifted up? And giving up yourself, giving up some of your, and to me, giving up yourself means to give up some of your selfish ideas. And this is to the husband. Would you give up some of your selfish ideas for the sake of your wife? Because that is what it's saying will be able to show that love for the person that you are now connected with. And you've become your relationship to that person has become like a church. It's because a church is a word that means a circle. You have become a circle. You have become a body. You have become an entity, and you're going to have to give up some of yourself for her. The 26th verse says, to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through your words. So it's saying that your words to her should be one that are sort of like holy and cleansing to her. It's like, in other words, it should be like an encouragement to her, something that frees her minds of some of the doubts and the misgivings she has about herself. It should be like something like water washing through her. It should not be this thing that we have that you need to control her. Your words, the husband words to his wife, should be a holy, cleansing, washing, like it was washing her with water. So that means that you should be washing away some of her doubts, washing away some of her fears, washing away some of her insecurities, just through your words that you can do this. And again, this is men. So this is, like I said, this is what men should be doing for in the relationship. The 27th verse says, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish. So it says through your word, you can help that wife become a radiant church, a radiant circle herself, a radiant place where blessings can come in, and that there will not be any stains or wrinkles or other blemishes, but she would be holy and blameless. So you can help free that woman's consciousness of so many things that are helping to hold her back and helping her and stopping her from being the radiant being that she is, that radiant church she is, through what? Your words. Say, in the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. So it's saying that when you create to work to increase that Christ consciousness in that relationship, it's like something that you're doing for your own body, because the two of you have become this one spiritual body. It says, he who loves his wife loves himself. So in the love you show for your wife, you're showing a love for your own spiritual consciousness. And it is helping to actually to help to grow your spiritual consciousness. It said, after all, no one ever hated his own body, but they fed and cared for the body, just as Christ does for the church. So this is telling you, you need to look at her as your own body, and that you should try to feed and care for that. For we are members of his body. And this is talking about when we're relating to church, that we are members of that Christ consciousness body. And so when you have a relationship, you can create a consciousness between the two of you that would be a powerful spiritual benefit for them. And in the 31st verse, it says, When the Bible said, for this reason, a man leaves his father and mother and be united with his wife, and the two become one flesh, says this is a profound mystery, but I am talking about Christ and the church. So really it's talking about that Christ consciousness when people come together um, and bond in a relationship, that you can get that Christ consciousness in there through that bonding that you do. Because it's saying the great mystery behind this bonding is that Christ, or what we call the Christ consciousness. And then the 33rd verse out, however, each one of you must also love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. And this is one of the places where I'm saying where the women will get more of the feeling and connection to that Christ consciousness, to the man showing love for her, and the husband will get more of a connection to that Christ consciousness of him being respected for the leadership role, the head role. And when I said the role he has as the head is not the chief tyrant and and uh, bully in chief. We're not talking about him being a bully. We're talking about to respect him for the role that he has to play as being the one who's supposed to help to keep that organization or keep that consciousness alive and well and radiant. Any questions about that so far? But the main part about it is, remember when you're looking for these, don't be so quick to look at the passages that talk about what the women should be doing. That's on them. Look for the passages that talk about what the man should be doing, because that is on you. And that's why I say this is sort of like a survival guide. You don't have to be going and saying, well, the wife isn't doing this, and the wife isn't doing that, and she's not showing me respect. Are you helping to relieve some of the insecurities, some of the fears, some of the doubts she has, making her this radiant being? And if you're not doing your part, how do you think she's going to be able to do her part? And I'm asking that rhetorically. The men don't. You don't have to answer right now. And I'm also going to look, and that's going to be the last one I'm going to look at, because this is in several places. But I think when you're finding all of them, now this one does give more instructions to the women than to the men. This is First Peter, the third chapter of First Peter. Here it does give more to the wife. It says, wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives. So this is telling the wives, by your behavior, even a man who does not have the wisdom in him, your behavior can help to get him to lift up his consciousness. Um, the second verse says, when they see the purity and reverence of your lives. So it's saying by the purity and reverence of your life can help lift up the consciousness of even men who do not have the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to be a leader. It says, and this is instructions to wives. It says, your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of an inner self, the unfailing, fading beauty of the gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. So it's saying that you're having this quiet spirit to connect up to God in the relationship, not just so much to submitting yourself to the husband, but how do you activate the Christ consciousness? How do you connect up with God in a relationship, even when you're dealing with a person who may not be in the word themselves? And you can do that through the inner, gentle, and quiet spirit that is within you. So the reason that the woman would show this gentle and quiet spirit is that she is trying to connect up to God, because the man is not being connected up to God. Remember, when the beginning of us, we talked about King Lemuel, and that saying belonging to God. But it's saying, a woman, what do you do when your husband has lost that Lemuel, he's lost his connection to God. It is telling you that through a gentle and quiet spirit, you can reintroduce the Spirit of God into your relationship, not by what your words are to the man, but by the inner consciousness that you have within you. And I said, I'm going to get off this quickly because we're really supposed to be talking about fathers, but it was just telling, we'll get to it because this does have a part that's the fathers, it's shorter, but just letting the women know what you're trying to do when you are curating this gentle and quiet spirit is that you're trying to, you're doing this when you're trying to replace the sight of God that the man has lost or the man is not connected with. For this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to adorn themselves. And remember, this is saying that these women did this in the past because when they were doing this, they were putting their hope in God, not in what they could tell the husband to do, but what they think that God could do by entering into that relationship. So since the man has not made the connection to God, it is telling the woman when you're in these relationships, you have to make that connection to God that the man has not made the connection, and adorn yourself with that inner quiet spirit. You're going to the inner quiet spirit to connect with the Christ consciousness within you as you're in the situation where the man has lost sight of that consciousness. They submitted themselves to their own husbands, like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him Lord. You are her daughters if you do what is right and do not give away. And here's the saying, is saying why so many women end up doing things that are detrimental to them. And it says by giving way to fear. So it's saying that don't, rather than be fearful of your husbands, and I think a lot of women don't admit this, but sometimes the things that they do, and especially sometimes the things that they do in secret, is because they fear the husband. And this is saying instead of having that fear, woman, what you should be doing is trying to connect up through gentleness and quietness to the Spirit of God and letting that Spirit of God help you to manifest what the man is not allowed to happen in their relationship. But don't give way to fear, where you'd have to, and I know women sometimes have to do things that they don't tell the husband about, but it says here that it's not through your words, but you still need to find that quiet and gentle spirit within you to bring this forth. But I'm really talking too much to women, and today is really should be talking about men. But I want the men to understand what a woman is doing when she is submitting to you. The submitting to you is not as much a submitting to you as it is a trying to connect up to the Spirit of God because you have failed to do that. Men. So in this passage, we're telling women when you have a man who is not in the Word and that you have to, through your chaste behavior, connect up to the Spirit of God, as to me is telling you that since the man hasn't connected up to the Spirit of God, like he was supposed to be the Lemuel or the one belonging to God, you have to now do both your job and the job that the man was supposed to do of being able to connect to God. So submitting is not for the man's sake. The submitting is that it's easier to connect up with God through a gentle, quiet spirit. And when the man has not, through his consciousness of having that gentle, quiet spirit to be able to connect up with God, women have to find that gentle, quiet spirit within them to be able to supply that Christ consciousness to the entire relationship. And in the 7th verse of this chapter, it says, husbands in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives. So it's telling, again, this is telling the husbands to be considerate and treat them with respect as the weaker partner and as heirs with you. Now, here are the things that you're supposed to see your wife as being an heir with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. And to me, this is an important part of this. One of the reasons I use it like this is because men, if you don't show consideration and respect for your wife, you are a lot of times hindering your prayers, because your prayers are to bring blessings to you as a group or a family. And if you then are going to have it where the wife um, feels fear, feels threatened, and feels out of sorts, she is going, her fear is going to hinder the greater blessings to come into you. You don't want your wife to be fearful. You don't want your wife to feel that she is lost or hopeless. You don't want your wife to feel that she is overburdened in relationship, because all of that will actually hinder the prayers that will be able to get to this one body, which is now your relationship. Um, and like I said, I want to get out here. I'm still almost as far as I used to be, but I do want to give you a time if anyone else have any thoughts or questions or comments about this. Again, remember, I called this my survival guide for men. I know I've said some things about women, but I did that mostly for men to understand what the role the wife is playing in there, that they are not submitting to you for your sake, they're submitting to you for the sake of the Christ consciousness in your relationship. So don't get thinking, so, oh no, she got to submit and do everything I say. No, she has to submit to you because she needs to connect to God, because you haven't. You haven't made the correct connection with God. And so the wife has to make that connection to God so that you can have God in the whole relationship. Um, uh, so don't think that the submitting is because you are so great and wonderful and that your thoughts are better than her thoughts. What is the best for both of you is to connect to the Christ consciousness. And it can be helpful if the man connects to that Christ consciousness and make that a part of what the family is. If the man does not make that connection, and even to help the man in bringing forth that connection, the wives should have that quiet, gentle spirit to make even more of that Christ consciousness available to that family. So any comments or questions? And again, let me say that a lot of this teaching that I'm bringing again today is because of things that were taught to me by my Illuminated Supreme Mother, Mildred Davis Miller. I want to repeat a message that we've been using of hers, which she says, I shall thank and praise God for his understanding. I think this is something that we all can get a blessing from by thanking and praise God for his understanding. I want to thank and praise God for us understanding that what both the husband and the wife need most in their lives is to increase the consciousness of Christ and God in their lives. The things that the Bible is telling you to do is not about ruling over someone like a brute or a bully. God doesn't want. God is not instructing men to be the bully in the relationship. He's instructing them, how do you become the Lemuel? How do you become that one that belongs to God and helps to bring the Christ consciousness into your relationship? And telling women that they can be a part of that duty to bring in the Christ consciousness into their relationship. And it is doing by showing that respect to the husband, but it's more through your conduct than it is through just being pretty. Oh, I know one thing that I wanted to mention here that I said that I probably don't tell this enough. And this was something that Master Mel talked about when he was saying about finding a good woman and about that inner beauty. And he should tell a story about a woman that he knew. And when he first saw this woman, he thought that she was so ugly that he didn't even want to look. He didn't like looking at her face. She was just this person. He just thought that she was just so bad looking that you didn't want to look at a face. You know how some people, when you look at their face and it makes you cringe, and you said, I don't want them to see me cringing at looking at their face. So I'm try to not look at that person's face. So I'm gonna say they won't see me grunging and at looking at their face. But he said a situation came up where he had to go and spend some time with her, and they were sitting on a couch, and they started talking. And what he said was, the more he sat there and talked to this woman, the more he started seeing the beauty that was inside of her. And the more he saw the beauty inside of her, the better her face started looking. And he kind of, because a lot of times I joke with my sons about that old song about if you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a pretty woman. What it's really talking about, in that, to me, the real message of that song is, don't be confused by the outer beauty of the woman. Look for the inner beauty. Now it says marry a woman uglier than you, but really what it's talking about is, are you going to be trapped in that outer beauty, or look to just the outer thing the person look, or are you going to take enough time to see what is the inner beauty of this person? Because my father said, like he said, the more he talked to this woman, the more beautiful she became, because of the way she conducted herself. And we men need to find out sometimes, and it is not saying that you have to get a wife who is not good looking, and even, to me, not better looking than you, but you'd better look to check to see, does she have that inner beauty? Does she have those inner qualities that will make it so it can help sustain you and can sustain your connection to the Christ consciousness, so that you can become an effective and prosperous body together, a whole together, a church together? That is a very, very important part of what is going to make your life more prosperous. It's not what she looks on the outside, not what kind of hairdo she has, or what her fingernails look like, or um, what size various parts of her body, whichever part of the body you like. That is not what's going to bring you the most success, joy, and sustainable happiness in your life. It's going to be, what type of inner spirit does she have? But that was a story that we need to show more of, that there is an inner beauty that a woman can have, no matter what she looks like on the outside, whether she's a beauty queen, or whether she has a face that when you first look at it, you are appalled by it. But if she has that inner beauty, you will find that she can be a blessing to you in your life, and even help you to manifest more of your prayers in your life. The spiritual things that you want to connect with. When it says that if you don't have the wife that has that inner beauty, and you don't actually encourage that inner beauty from her, that you are actually blocking your connection to the spirit into inner prayers. So again, let me see if did anyone else want to have any comments. Any comments, questions, or suggestions? If not, I'll leave with the words of our Supreme Mother again, that encourage you to say every day, I shall thank and praise God for his understanding. So I'd like to thank you for being with us on this Father's Day. I hope these words have been an encouragement to you, to help you to understand how to be always working to increase the Christ consciousness in your life, in all that you do, in the relationship you have. And remember, some of the same things we're saying about your relationship with your spouse. You want to increase the Christ consciousness of the places where you work. You want to increase the Christ consciousness of the organizations that you're a part of, you want to increase the Christ consciousness of your nation and the country around you, because it's through that increase in the consciousness of God and the fact that we're all in this together that will help all of these things to be more successful. Again, our words, the recording is posted, will be posted on our website at www.spiritualguidancetemple.org. On that website, you can also make donations to us, or you can make donations through Zelle or Cash App to my phone number, which is 954-549-4713. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you all your great wishes for us for Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers, and to your mothers. Hope you have happy men around you, whether they're your sons or your fathers, and all that you can in your heart be proud of those who are around you. But remember, Christ is the conqueror, and he can conquer great things. So thank you, and I'm going to turn off recording. Bye-bye.